Here we have a view application that uses the Bryntum Scheduler component for a super fast yet robust scheduling UI. Over in my code editor, this is the code that powers that scheduler. We are in an app.view file. We're importing the Bryntum Scheduler from the Bryntum Scheduler view package. Down in the template, we are using the component and then providing it a configuration, which we've defined in script setup above. That produces exactly what you see here. Now, in this video, I want to walk you through the 4 context menus available. The first is the time axis header menu. This displays whenever you right-click on any of the gray parts here of the header above, so on a day or on a time. When I right-click on those, we do get the ability to filter tasks, searching by name, to zoom in and out of the scheduler, or limit the shown events to a certain date range. These are the default settings, but of course we can customize this to our heart's content. The second menu available to us is the Schedule menu. The Schedule menu appears when you right-click anywhere on the canvas here, the white canvas of the scheduler. Its only default option is to add a new event. The third context menu is the Event menu. It displays whenever you right-click on an event. Finally, if we right-click on one of these columns on the left-hand side, we see the Cell Context menu. Perfect. So that's what you start out with by default, but let's get to customizing. So first off, we can turn any of these context menus off that we'd like. To do that, we target each of the features by name, followed by the suffix feature, and we just set their values to false. Back over in the browser, if I give the page a refresh, just for good measure, and try to right-click on the white space here, yeah, sure enough, I get my browser default context menu and not the one specific to the scheduler. Same thing for the time axis header, as well as a particular event. Besides disabling any of these context menus entirely, we could also add, remove, or customize the items within each of them by providing an object instead of a boolean. Then you'll want to target the items property and tell it which items within the menu you want to hide. For example, we could remove a single item in the menu like this. First, we target the particular item in the menu that we want to remove, and then set its value to false. In this case, we're removing the edit event from the event menu. Sure enough, when I right-click on an event now, we only have copy, cut, and delete. The edit option is gone. To get a quick reference of the default items available to the different menus, you can come to Guides, and then Customization, Customize Context menu in the documentation, and here is a great reference for what is available. So Edit Event here is the one we just removed or disabled. There's also Delete Event and Unassign Event for the event menu. Same thing here for the Schedule menu, and then the Time Axis menu as well. Besides disabling a menu item altogether, you could also customize the default items to fit your needs. Let's take a menu item of the Time Axis menu as an example. How about date range? Back in the code, first I have to target my time axis header menu, then items, and then the date range. This time, instead of saying false to disable it or remove it, I'm going to provide an object where we can customize its properties. But what properties are available to us? Well, let's check out the docs to find out. Here in the API documentation, you can see that under Core, and then Widget, Menu Item is a listing of all the different properties that we can customize. So things having to do with CSS, We have some common ones here, like the href it should lead to when clicked, what text should display, aka the label for the item, and a whole lot more. I'd like to customize the text and the weight for the item. Now, the text is pretty self-explanatory. The weight determines the position of the item in the list. The higher the number, the farther down the list of items it is. Let's also get a bit crazy and give it a blue background. Why not? Now you can see that the date range item has moved up above zoom. As it was below it before, it has this blue background color that you just can't miss, and it is labeled Start End. Wow, isn't it simple to customize these menu items? Not only can we customize existing items though, we can also add brand new ones of our own. This looks a lot like customizing the existing items except using a custom property name, and then providing some of the same properties as applied to the defaults. This time I'll provide a fancy icon, some text of course to give it a label, the CLS property, which stands for class and allows us to add any custom CSS classes to the element. A built-in one is b-separator that adds a visual line above the item. And then finally, perhaps even most importantly, an on-item callback function. This determines what happens when the item is clicked. Now, it receives as part of its payload the event record, which is an event model type. If you go over to the event model documentation under API, and then scheduler, model, event model, then you can see all these different properties and functions that we have access to on the event record. For our use case, let's shift the selected event ahead by an hour. Works like a charm. Now you've got a good direction on how you can customize all of these different context menus. However, I want to share another tip with you, and that's about applying these configurations dynamically. Because sometimes we aren't just hard coding these configurations in, but rather they are based on some reactive data in our application. For instance, maybe we only want to grant access to edit and delete an event to certain users. In order to do that, we can use the process items method on the context menu that we want to apply the configuration for. In this case, the event menu. Now, I'll create some dummy reactive data called access granted. Then, inside of process items, we'll check to see if access has been granted, and if not, we'll remove the edit event and the delete event menu items. Now on the page, since I've defaulted the access granted ref to false, when I right-click on an event, we don't have all of the abilities we had before. But if I go into the Vue.js DevTools and then toggle access granted to true, nice. Now we are able to see all of the items within the context menu. Finally, before we wrap up this video, I think it's worth mentioning that even though you can customize these context menus very, very highly, you might want to even replace them entirely with your own implementation. The documentation that can help you through this is under the Guides navigation item, Customization, and then Replace Context Menus.